This is new. How come there's so many new species and why that's cool? Just come see, or just look at this. This is amazing. Something that gives so much is worth protecting. People don't have to be divers to be part of the team. Why is this animal more biologically successful now? Or what has happened and why are these changes? It is going into a tropical rainforest in the water. With rebreathers, I'm not blowing out bubbles. It feels like that's all I have. I wasn't stupid. I think it is harder for a woman. The academic system is broken. There is still a tremendous amount of discrimination, very illegal, and they really are. One of the biggest errors that is consistent, and I'm consistently shocked by, is that I'm at the University of Hawaii, at Manoa in Honolulu, and here is my outer office where there's a good chunk of my collections here of Gorgonian octocorals. And instead of putting them in jars, I found them to be much more cost effective to put them in bags in 95% ethanol and food saver bags, and put them in the drawers. And it works a treat. So these are specimens that I have collected over the past, probably about 16 years now, if not more, conducting research on the Gorgonian octocorals around the Indo-Pacific. My name is Dr. Sonia J. Rowley. I have a lab here at the University of Hawaii, and I'm a marine biologist, and I study sea fan corals, which are also called Gorgonians.
And who is Sonia, really?
Sonia, it really is a diver and a lover of nature and studying evolution. I love it. I'm absolutely fascinated by nature. It all started in the UK, and my parents started diving when I was 3, and that started my love for the ocean and being in the natural world. My first ever dive, and also lots of snorkels, were up in Scotland. It must have been freezing, but I don't remember that. I just remember it was beautiful and stunning, clear water and all these amazing creatures. So it all started in the UK. Currently, my research focuses on the Gorgonian octocorals, those sea fan corals, and they are very dominant at depth. So first of all, determining who's there and using the rebreather diving technology and the diving that I was raised with as a tool for scientific research. Now, the scientific research involves characterizing those environments, like who's in town, as I like to call it, and measuring, different things like temperature and water flow and things like that. But also then comparing that with other locations in depth, and then comparing the species that you find, because they're often different at depth. And then why are they so biologically successful? Like, why are they creating these forests? And how come there's so many new species? I mean, yes, we've not been down there, but there's very strange species. They've evolved these novel characteristics in order to survive in what I've come to learn are very dynamic environments. What I mean by dynamic is that the temperature can vary up to 20 degrees centigrade in a single day. So with scuba diving, as you know, when you breathe out, you've got bubbles. So we actually breathe out a good percentage of oxygen. Okay, so we're breathing in like 21% oxygen and we breathe out typically 17%. So that's a waste. What a rebreather does is it recycles that gas and fortifies it with the right amount of oxygen and whatever other gas, depending on the depth that I'm at. We call that a dynamic breathing gas, in order to prolong the amount of time I can spend at deeper depths and make it safer and recycle that gas. And the waste products are actually scrubbed out by something we call a scrubber. And so this dynamic gas enables me, as I said, to dive deeper, longer, and be able to spend more time working on the animals and being in that environment. So the deepest I've ever been on a rebreather is 181 meters.
Is there anyone else or any other women in the world that is doing what you're doing currently?
Not for what I'm aware of. There's a team, a family team of Under the Pole, and they're characterizing the Mesophotic environments in various places, and so they're working on on this type of research, but not necessarily specific the Gorgonians. And there's another one, Juan Sanchez, over in Colombia, and he also works on them, not necessarily answering the questions I'm doing or going to the depths that I'm going to.
What is that Mesophotic environment and why you became so interested in that environment?
The Mesophotic zone is really a human-derived term. Meso being middle and photic meaning light. Essentially, that can be problematic. Now, what the Mesophotic environment means to me is that how communities change across a different depth range, right? And how that changes. And part of what my research actually shows that in different locations relative to human population structure or different geomorphology, various different factors, how that population changes across depth, how the communities change across depth, and compare that to different environments. As you go deeper, the communities will change, and light is part of that, but also so is temperature, so is dissolved oxygen, so is chlorophyll. There's so many different things. So as you go deeper, you're dealing with a different water body. It's not just light penetration.
It would be so much easier to study shallower reefs. Why those depths? Why they are important to you?
I knew even before I started to study marine biology that I knew that that was an area that I had something to give, that I could really go in and do some good work. I also knew that very few people, if at all, were going down to those depths. And as a woman and being raised with the marine world as my playground, I knew that I had something to give. Now, when I was starting to do marine biology as an undergraduate, one of the things they said was, find your study organism. And I was like, oh my goodness, pressure. And of course, everyone's studying shallow water corals and shallow water fish and things like that. And I saw when I was in Indonesia that no one was studying the Gorgonians. And I thought, well, they're everywhere. It was like the elephant in the room. And I also noticed that they were seriously abundant and diverse at depth. To me, it was an unknown habitats, an area that I was very comfortable in already. I had those skills. It was challenges that I'd already overcome, as it were. They were second nature, and that I could go down and do really good things and progress within myself as well.
And why do you think it's important for us to know about those deep Gorgonians?
One, because we don't know about them. Two, they create fields as you would as in fields of trees. They're just underwater trees and they don't photosynthesize. Well, some of them do, but at depth they don't. And so they provide secondary space for many, many other organisms, including food fish, that are very important. And right now, as temperature is increasing in the shallows, a lot of those food fishes are pushing down deep, so you get a lot of them. Now, the other thing about octocorals per se, but the Gorgonians, they don't move as in they can't get up and walk off if it's uncomfortable. So they use what we call secondary metabolites. Now, these are very powerful chemicals that are valuable for pharmaceuticals. And so studying those, I'm able to determine which species are not fouled. And they're the ones we really need to focus on to find out how they're surviving, what chemicals they're using to survive. Many scientists can use a lot of those species that are biologically successful at depth in order to isolate chemicals that they use for that biological success and put that into pharmaceuticals for human diseases. In my work, well, first of all, I can identify what those species are, what they need to target, as opposed to just sampling everything and hoping for the best. So I can narrow down that focus and give them a reason as to why that would be. The symbiotic association, so the creatures that also live in symbiosis with Gorgonians, also are very important. So there are many, many things, many hidden secrets that the Gorgonians have that I'm able to sort of highlight, and so other scientists can actually just use those.
And for someone who doesn't know, what is a symbiotic relationship underwater?
So symbiosis is like an association. It's a relationship where two distantly related species typically form a very profitable synergistic relationship. And that synergy is where the sum is greater than the whole of its parts. And the best description of this, or the best example of this, is a coral reef. So you have a coral, which is an animal, and then its association is with a single-celled algae. And you put those two together, and the waste of one is food for the other. And that's how that works. Now, many Gorgonians do that as well. But down at depth, then we start looking at different microbiology and different associations. There's other associations. You get brittle stars that also hang out with Gorgonians. You know, why would that be? And crinoids. There's many, many different symbiotic associations, relationships that they have. I mean, I suppose another example is humans and dogs. You know, most humans can't be doing without their dogs, and vice versa.
And how long you've been working on that?
So it's 15 to 20 years now. I just thought what I needed to do was identify the animals, and then I can start answering questions of why they're so biologically successful. Well, then I realized after going through all the different museums that we didn't actually know what most of these animals were. So then I would start collecting. I started collecting mainly across the Indo-Pacific, because a lot of work is not done there because it's hard to try and determine what the species actually were. And in order to do that, you need to be able to sample in different locations in order to compare them, to justify why this species is new and why this species is new and why this species is new. To actually describe a species is actually very hard. And it's estimated on an average of 13 years to describe one species.
And how many new species have you discovered?
More than 13 years worth. No, actually quite a lot. And that would be hard for me to nail a name on, because I'm in the middle of sort of describing a lot of them. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of funding. And that is one of the biggest challenges I have found in science that I had not anticipated. The lack of funding is one of the biggest barriers. And as a woman, it's even harder. It is assumed that we are less capable, and particularly as divers. And that has been my experience, and it has been a great shock.
It seems like you're very, very passionate about your work. Were you always sure, and did you know very early in the stage of your life that you want to become a scientist and you want to become a marine biologist?
No. I thought that schoolwork and academia was for those super smart people over there, and I did not fit that category from my understanding. I'm dyslexic, so I learn differently. It does not make me stupid. That is the only difference. And so becoming a scientist and a marine biologist is, as we say, a dog's hind leg. You know, it's not been straightforward. It was only until I was 30 years old that I then had an epiphanous moment and was like, oh, I'm going to be a scientist. But other than that, it was never on my radar whatsoever.
And what would you say to a younger Sonia to not make the same mistakes as you have done? What have you learned from?
Okay, we might have to answer this one twice. Because there's a big part of me that wants to turn around and say, don't. Because it's been so hard. I've sacrificed everything except my integrity. Actually, that's a real answer. You may as well keep it. And what to say to younger Sonia and anyone across the board? Don't believe any of them. Believe your heart. Believe what you know to be true. And I always knew that I belonged in the natural world, and the ocean had my heart, as it were. And but I couldn't see, looking at societal ways, how I could do that. I also knew that, being just a diver was not enough. I knew intuitively that I wasn't stupid, even though I was told I was, because I didn't learn the way that they expect you to learn. And of course, there's evidence showing that most people don't, but I knew that I wasn't stupid, but I didn't know how to be smart in modern society. You know what I mean? It's like, how do I do that? I didn't even know what a marine biologist was. I never even heard of the phrase, and yet I was surrounded by them that came on the boat. It was just a completely different world to me. So to younger Sonia is listen to your heart and not to the people, and know and follow what you know to be true. There's been so many situations where other people I felt brought down by other people, and it's never been any of my business. I think a lot of what I've done, I wouldn't change. My nature is to be kind, but motivated. Keep doing that. And always be honest. Always. It's not always well met, those attributes, but these are the best ones I have.
And is there anything that you learned from your beloved Gorgonians and their behavior and their survival methods that helped you survive those difficult moments in academia when you felt stuck or not appreciated enough?
I remember on my own PhD acknowledgement thesis, so I was like, I thank the Gorgonians themselves. They've taught me a lot about myself, of the fortitude, of the resilience, and by studying them takes me away from the stupidity, and that's all it is, of the human stupidity. Because when you study the natural world, and in my case the Gorgonians, then you see the genius. That's intelligence, not all the rubbish that everyone does on the surface.
Why does coral matter?
So coral across the board as a group matters significantly. Now, it's a large group, but we're going to obviously talk about Gorgonian corals, but I'm just going to spend a moment talking about corals as a whole. You get many, many, many species, thousands of species. You find them in the shallows, you find them in the mangroves, and you find them all the way down to the abyssal plains. Corals are critically important. They're ecosystem engineers. They provide habitat for many, many, many species, whether living closely or transiently, nursery grounds. If we don't have corals, whether it's a coral reef or a coral forest, we lose a tremendous amount of biological life. And by losing that biological life, you lose the fish, you lose many, many, many items of food that people take for granted, many, many resources that people survive on. So corals are important for a whole variety of reasons. As society continues to develop, obviously you have the pharmaceuticals, because there's much more chemicals that are harming us, and people need help with various diseases. And so the corals, many of the Gorgonians, do have many, many substances that can maybe help prevent some of the harm that we're doing to ourselves already.
What is the change you've seen over those almost 20 years, 2 decades of your studies? Because you're coming back to the same places.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of changes, and a lot of them are quite jarring. There's this huge sense of comfort when you go down deep and you see your old friends. If you go back to the same place doing the time series, and I've done that in Micronesia and in Indonesia, and but I also have these very jarring experiences. I've had those in the shallows where you jump in and it was 100% coral cover, and then there's not a coral in sight, and that's wow, and that's hard coral. And then you go down at depth and usually everyone's still there. What I'm starting to find is, especially where you've got high human population structure and heavy international tuna fisheries, so that's the purse seiners and the longliners, that has a very hard, difficult impact that people don't realise actually. Not just on the shallows, it's not just on the fish stocks, it's across the board. And of course with global climate change, I'm now seeing that the higher temperatures are pushing deeper, and also seeing invasive species pushing deeper and impacting some of the Gorgonians. So the time series is very, very important. And it's actually, just an aside, it's one of those things where I kind of wanted to do it, and each time I don't know how it's going to work, and somehow I managed to bring it together, you know. Now, when I come to explore to all these different places, when I go to depth, again, I feel the solace of I see an environment that I feel is completely untouched by humans, and see all these new species to science, like new friends, you know, which then I can reference to, like my time series places, and then be able to create this kind of breadcrumb trail across the Indo-Pacific, as it were. And then being able to compare from like 2015 to 2025. And I can assure you, in Micronesia alone, it's a big, big difference, and across depth. So whilst there's always going to be differences across depth, because you've got different environmental influences, you also have significant differences over time, and some of those are successes and some of those are not so successful. Some of that, what I mean by that is many species perish, but you also get other species that are just right as rain.
Living in Hawaii, we have some marine protected areas here, right? Yeah. But we're seeing, especially in the United States, but also in other countries, that a lot of politicians want to take those protections away. Mm. How does that affect underwater environment based on what you've seen and what you've studied?
Well, all exploitation of any natural environment is for human and monetary gain. I've seen a lot of changes over the years, even from when I was a child. And with the recent documentaries for Sir David Attenborough, he was talking about the scallops and the meal beds. I saw that when I was a kid. It was hard, but it was hard because we would only go down and get a handful of things for dinner, you know, and then all of a sudden the dredgers would come along and it was all gone for 15 years, you know. So with regards to protection, I mean, it's critically important. I mean, it's intelligent for a start, and there's so much evidence that has been shown in a variety of platforms, in media platforms, not just behind paywalls of research papers, that having marine protected areas works, because nature is allowed to be nature. Nature is allowed to thrive and just have massive abundance and diversity, which spills over into non-protected areas. And therefore, we benefit tremendously. Now, if you open up those protected areas, then humans will just take more, just keep taking. And so then we will not have any seed stock left. One of the biggest errors that is consistent, and I'm consistently shocked by, is that people think that the ocean is infinite. The resources in the ocean, because it's so vast, is infinite. No, it's finite. If you fish enough, the fish will no longer be there. If you destroy enough, what you're destroying will no longer be there. Each time that these marine protected areas are created and properly policed, because often you get what we call paper parks, so if they're properly policed, then you get thriving. I mean, don't most of us want to thrive, just not survive, you know? And it's the same with the natural world. So we're providing an environment for the natural world to thrive in abundance, in effect, so we benefit again. So to be intelligent is to allow that to happen. To be stupid is to prevent that from happening, to stand in the way of the natural world's abundance. The sheer volume of paperwork and legal battles and justification just to protect somewhere is quite astonishing, and that's not what I do. So it's, you know, it blows my mind really that you have to justify that something that gives so much is worth protecting, you know, and yet we have some brilliant examples where that has worked. And so that's the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, which is extremely important to continue to protect with what it gives. And we have Raja Ampat, Catalina, those Channel Islands, all these places, if left alone, just revert back to their most beautiful environments. We just look at COVID. This place really changed with the lockdown. It was just fantastic. Well, so my motivation, is pure fascination. We're allowed to have joy and to share that intrigue and determine why these animals are so biologically successful, to put my skills to good use. I would not say that I was a conservation biologist, but I want what I learn and see and share to be used for conservation. The same with maybe pharmaceuticals and other things. I want that to be used for the good. It's extremely powerful. When people see it, I watch people out in the atolls, when they see the tremendous amount of abundance and biodiversity at depth, next minute it's just protected. You know, it's not as bad as now in sort of civilized society where they have to go through years and years of approvals before something's protected, and by which time it may have gone. So the power of sharing runs deep, no pun intended. I personally feel that the conservation angle is overwhelming for me. I love to work with people who would put that information that I can get to good use. And it can.
As a regular person that just probably watches this video, and some might not even have a scuba gear on ever, or not even been to tropical islands and atolls and seen coral in a real environment, why should I care?
Why should you care? It's a reasonable question. And that's a hard one actually, because I go down there and go, oh, isn't it obvious? It's amazing, but there's obviously more to that, because people need me to prove to them that beauty and nature's intelligence is worth it, I'm like, what? These provide essential habitats for food fishes and many different species that we don't even know exist. Biodiversity begets biodiversity. We need it in order for the natural world to survive, and in order for the natural world to survive, that's how we survive. If we don't have the natural world, we don't have us. We're signing our own death warrant. And down at depth, there is huge biodiversity that supports life that we need. And that, for example, are food fishes, is one of the many examples. That's why, one of the reasons it's important. So if you don't have that biodiversity, if you don't have that variation, then with changing dynamic environments, now down at mesophotic depths, they are really dynamic. Here you have a very dynamic and dangerous environment where you've got whole ecosystems thriving, and it's just buzzing down there, right? That holds keys of how we can handle change. And so biodiversity is really important, and particularly environments where it's sketchy, where it's hard, where it's difficult, where it's dynamic. These are really important creatures to study, ecosystems to support, because they support us. Without one environment, you won't have the other one, and so on. There's so many things we still don't actually know, but there's so many things that we do know, that the coral reefs, the pelagic environments, they're all intertwined. If you lose one, then eventually, sooner or later, the others will be impacted, and not positively. So to affect a change of imbalance is to effectively put our own survival at risk.
Do you have a family? Do you have kids?
No.
Because a lot of time people do things to make sure that their kids, their grandchildren, they're going to see the world that they've seen. Why do you do what you do? Why do you care? Why do you go through this whole hardship?
I'm not sure. I feel driven. I do feel driven. I don't know what else I would do. I love what I do. That is exploited. I do know that. And I do know that it helps people who do have children that they want to have a lovely environment for. Obviously, I don't have children, so I don't have that outlook. I don't know how that feels. So I don't know what else I'd do.
Did you want to have a family?
I'm not sure. I've never been in love. And so I think if I had, I might feel differently.
Do you think you were in love in your work and the ocean, the nature? Is that the love of your life?
I can't live without it, if that's the case. It's been my solace, it's been my church, it's my safe place. It's where I go for safety, it's where I go for comfort. And I don't find comfort too much in humans.
And as a woman scientist, doing what you do, diving to those depths, do you think it's easy to start a family, and what are the challenges there as a woman?
I would say it was not easy if you're doing it alone. And I wouldn't say I chose to do it alone. I've been backed up into quite a few corners. I do know, there's the Under the Pole family, and they do it as a family. And that has obviously been very successful. And I often look at their posts and see that they have their kids with them on the boats, and that's how it was with my parents. So I really, I champion that. I think that's absolutely fantastic, that it's doable. It's not been my path. Like I said, I've not found any, I've never been in love, and I'm not one to run around looking. I'm busy, yeah. Things to do. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. You won't find me on a dating agency or anything like that. It's like, so I think, obviously it's doable, and it's just not been my path. Whilst I don't have a family or any of those things, that doesn't mean I don't want to share this tremendous environment. And it's hard to put it into words. It's like, look, just come see, or just look at this. This is amazing. Like, it feels like that's all I have to give.
When do you not feel like Sonia?
Trying to raise funds. I'm not a fundraiser. It's what I have to do, 98% of the time. If you want to say fish out of water, that's it. It's the most inefficient use of my time you could possibly imagine. In those kind of stuffy environments where, that's other people are very good at that. You know, I always used to just, whatever it was that I needed to achieve, I'd be like, right, okay, I'll just give it my best shot. And I'd keep doing that. And you just end up being extremely overwhelmed. Because as academia, you know, you've got all the papers to write, grants to write, salary to get. And then somewhere in there you need to do the science. And then there's the social media, and people say, well, you don't have to do that. And it's like, it's the quickest way I can get out that there's beautiful things down there and we need to pay attention. And it does give you a sense of worth, because all the other processes mostly are dead ends and quite vicious. The peer review process is very unkind, I will say. And just begging for money. Like, it's distasteful, to say the least. And I fear that I'll probably get criticism for that, but you know, there's many things we should be doing in life, and for me, that's not anywhere close. I'm not an admin person, and I'm not a classroom person either. Classroom is the ocean.
What are the biggest misconceptions you came across in terms of your work or your research or generally coral reefs? How people see your work and you're like, no, this is not exactly how it looked like. This is what it looks like.
Oh, you have the dream job. Oh, I get that. Even a couple of days ago, get it on social media. It's like, no, I'm not paid. You know, I have to find all that myself. Oh, you're so lucky. Oh, all this, you know, and like I've made whatever I've got, you know, I've got the dream job, which involves a lot of debt, I guess, you know what I mean? And, so, you know, I still hope that will change. You know, I'm still human, whilst there's no sort of, romantic love in my life, hasn't been for a very long time. That doesn't mean I don't have you know, I don't want like a home or a boat or something like that, you know, just stability. That would be outstanding. So one of the biggest misconceptions I think any marine biologist or scientist will tell you is that that we get paid like normal folks. No, that's rare. Big misconception is how people treat the natural world and how people treat those who study the natural world. What we do is extremely important, and it kind of makes, you know, it makes you feel like you're not enough. You're doing something wrong. Far from it. Because if the time comes where we don't have any biodiversity left, then, you know, they'll be like, oh, damn, we backed the wrong horse.
So is it worth it?
I don't know. Actually. I don't know.
Any regrets?
Allowing people to treat me inappropriately. Not stepping up sooner. Yeah. Doubting myself. You know, believing things that weren't true. Yeah. Being a woman, doing both science and diving is kind of like, it's a double-edged sword, really, because science, like it or not, still has a lot of implicit bias, and the same with diving. And whilst I may have inherited respect from the fact that I was raised in this environment, there is still a tremendous amount of discrimination in practical measures. You know, some of the things that I have had said and done about and to me are fundamentally atrocious and in some cases very illegal. When you step up and you always feel like you have to defend yourself, that makes it worse. You know, no one should be put in that situation, particularly doing the work that I do. So I think the regret would be is taking other people seriously.
What would be the highlights then of your work? What pushes you to do it over and over again?
Oh, the deep dives. Like, I am in my stride when I'm running my expeditions. hands down. This is where I belong. Now, I can also feel that when I'm doing the research, as in terms of the literature and the science and stuff like that, but that's very hard to do when you have to raise your own funding, when your own salary. When I'm running my expeditions, and very often I'll stay a little longer and just go and work with the local communities, and it's wonderful because I just get to be able to do what I need to do freely, and it just really works. And when I'm down at depth, I can really focus. Not only do I not have the worries and concerns of funding, because I can't do anything about funding when I'm not sat at a desk. When I'm in the ocean, I'm there to focus. You get 100% focus. There is no ADHD, dyslexia, none of these labels. Like, I am there, present, capable, and on it. And it would be wonderful if that was 100% of the time. So I feel very free, very capable, and definitely food for the soul. And I know, because I'm doing what I'm really good at, what I'm capable of doing, without anyone breathing over my shoulder trying to bring me down for no good reason. None. And so I feel very free in that environment, because it's all good. It's all good. I've been diving now for 52 years, 42 years. I'm 52 years old. This year is 42 years, because I'll be 53. So I started when I was 11. So this year, I just feel alive. Like, I know I'm complete, absolutely complete. Like, this is it. I'm made up. I wouldn't say I was a different woman. I am Sonia in those environments.
How is a day in a field look like for you as Sonia?
So a day in the field as Sonia, I typically get up early in the morning around sunrise. I've usually only had 2 or 3 hours sleep at that point. Now I'll get up, and I've either, depending on what it's done, I've usually rigged up my rebreather the night before. Okay, so when I get up, I then recheck my rebreather. I've had everything prepped the night before, and so then we get everything onto the boat, right? So I've got everything already prepped the night before. We go onto the boat and we go to the dive. Now, the other thing I do is I make sure all the bailout cylinders, all the safety cylinders, and all the safety is checked. The people who are involved, we all know what's going on, so we're briefed, and so go out, get ready for the dive. Prepare for the dive, do all the safety checks for the dive. And so I have a protocol that I have, which is specific, that involves the science, integrates the science and the safety before we even jump in the water. Now, then we do all our checks. We check everything. We check each other's rebreathers, units, the people on the surface, they know what's going on. And then I go and do the dive. And depending on what the dive mission is, depending on what that looks like. So I typically stage high oxygen cylinders in the shallows. As a small person, having all that bailout hanging off me ends up being more detrimental. I need to be aware of that. Bigger people, taller people, this is where they have the advantage, and they often call themselves like gas mules and things like that, and that's helpful. But I always stage anyway oxygen in the shallows, 100% oxygen, 80% oxygen. Everything else I take with me, and I have different gases pertinent to different depths. So say, for example, I was going down to do purely collection. So I would go down, can take about 5 to 10 minutes to get down to my chosen depth. So let's say it's 150 meters depth. And by that time I'm going down, we're looking out for each other, making sure everything's working. I'm usually just checking, making sure that my bailout is primed but not on. So what that means is it's pressurized, but it's not actually switched on, because I have been through those situations where I've had them on and then, they've started to free flow and then you lose your gas. you know, we've had all those experiences. So I'm checking that. I'm checking that my rebreather's working. I'm checking everything's all good. So you're on the go all the time. I'm also often videoing at the same time the environment, my descent, because this is new most of the time. And I can go back over that and see where I can do more work, or what questions could be answered, or what I need to be paying attention to. I've also learned that I can share that on social media, because no one else is going to be able to see this. You know, it's important. People get a lot from that. They also get to see how important these environments are. And they really are. And with rebreathers, I'm not blowing out bubbles, particularly as I'm descending. And that's also really important, because I'm not scaring the fish, you know, and then I get to see who's in town. So if I'm going down, then when I get to depth, I make sure I get the set point that I want to be at, and all the safety is good, everyone's safety is in good place. And so then I start targeting the specimens I want. Now, the good thing about Gorgonians is at depth, there's so many of them, right? And it's not just so many of the same thing. There's so many of different things. It's really diverse. It is going into a tropical rainforest in the water. And so I just start working. I actually don't have to move too far, you know, so I don't use scooters. Now, if I was doing pure exploration, then maybe that would be useful, but then I would scooter to one area and I wouldn't move for a while, you know? So I'd be up there for about down there for about 20 minutes. And then I would start working my way back up, still collecting. And that is all based on my safety. So every time I find a specimen I want to look at and sample, I get my scale, I take an image of that coral with the scale, and I take a small snippet of it. I have a pre-labeled Ziploc bag, and that's in a pouch. I have a pouch here, and I put the coral in that. I take a picture of that pre-labeled bag, and then I put it in a net bag, and then I go to the next one, and then I go to the next one. I also take a photograph of my dive computer, and that tells me the time. It gives me a time signature. So that one specimen, I have all the information, what I need for that specimen, which will stay with it for the rest of its scientific life now. It's now become science. And then I keep doing it above depth, at each depth as I ascend.
And how one can benefit from joining you on one of those expeditions?
Oh, there is loads of ways that people individually can benefit. First of all, they can be part of a team. Many things I wanted to provide, and one of them in particular is that extended time on a rebreather or in the water, whether you're just free diving or snorkeling or scuba diving. Spending time in the water, in the natural environment, building your own skills and experience in a safe environment. Now, that has been invaluable for me and I want to share that, to be able to start asking critical questions about the environment. Why has that changed? And also to share with people, say, for example, with what I've done in Micronesia and in Indonesia, I have time series. So I can share what's changed and where I'm now focusing new research in order to determine why is this animal more biologically successful now, or what has happened and why are these changes?
If someone wanted to follow you in your footsteps, what practical advice would you give them?
You know, the academic system is broken. You ask, most academics will say that. Many people don't stay. And most of those are women. I am sorry to say. I still believe that research can be a clean, well-lit place. And there are many ways to do that and to do research. It doesn't always have to be through the institutions, which can often make it very hard for us. When you're at depth working, you can't kid yourself. You are in the environment and you are very, very focused and you're very honest with yourself and your situation, and apply that to every area of your life. There is many different ways, and I actually wouldn't say I was a success because I spend all my time begging for money. That's not a success story. I really don't see it, you know. But I guess in some ways I've made lots of things work. Like I dive deep, I'm able to conduct lots of things down at depth, and which is fantastic. If people want to go into instruction, then there's that whole process to go through there. And but you don't really get trained to be a teacher in regards. I mean, my assumption was if you were going to be a teacher, you go to teacher training school. So I'm a bit naive in that regard. So you can go that route and then spend a couple of months a year going for money to do your research, or you can go another route and be part of a different type of institution, or go for independent funding, or there's more philanthropic organizations that are opening up now. I'd say it's quite a minefield. A lot of the women I know no longer are in science that I went through undergraduate with or graduate studies, or they have taken backseat roles. A lot of them go into communication of various types. A lot of them also end up in what I call the perpetual postdoc. You know, just they can't seem to get past that glass ceiling. I'm soft money, so that's a glass ceiling, very thick one. About, I think, over 80% of the soft money scientists are women. So that's hard. I think if you really, really, really want to do this, you have to be prepared to sacrifice a great deal. So that's a question if you want to. It's definitely different for men. I'm not here to argue with anyone. This is my experience and also my observation from what I've seen with others. Just the same thing. Stay true, stay honest, do the best you can. And I've also had to learn to take time out for Sonia. Do something for Sonia every day. And for me, it's jumping in the ocean, just making sure I'm having that time to do something that feeds me. Because being in science and being in a society where you have to beg for money is very, very draining. And there's forms and this and that and and you just drown in that, you know. So doing something that is beautiful, even though it's not, there's no Gorgonians in sight, is really important. I guess what I really would hope is that I can circle back to do my research full time properly, and then I could do a good job. And I'm not sure if I can.
And do you think it's harder for women to stay focused on what they're doing, to believe that they're good enough?
Yes, absolutely. I think it is harder for a woman. It has been my experience. It's harder for a woman. And not just from unwanted attention or put downs from men. You also get queen bee behavior. It's pretty slippery. You find it very hard to trust people. And so what it does is you end up questioning your own intuition, your own abilities. You start trying to fit in a little more, which leads to compromises, and you can't live with that. I can't sleep at night when I'm doing that. So when I say sticking to your guns, it's like knowing what is right here to do what is right. I've risked my life to get these animals to ask questions. That is a big deal, and I will defend that, definitely. It is a matter of my worth in many ways. When I'm out on the islands, on the Pacific Islands in Micronesia, for example, is a great example. When I'm out in those remote communities, they, whilst they're very aware of how manipulative Western society can be, they cut straight through it. And it's so refreshing. It's a dream to work with them. And they call me their family. And it feels that way because we just get on with the job. There's no manipulation. There's none of that stuff. There's none of it. You know, you don't have to read between any lines. You know, we just get to it and it's great. We have so much fun. So I've noticed that navigating life around in a society that makes wrong things right is very inhibitory. Remote locations have had to survive in unity for generations. They don't have time for that kind of manipulative nonsense because it's a bit more about survival. So working with them, it's straight up, 1 and 1 is 2, etc., etc. In civilized society, I watched, you know, people just get away with whatever, and it makes you question everything you do. Yeah. So it is very refreshing. It's not just that these environments are so beautiful and captivating, the people that rely on it are exactly the same. And it's really important. They are doing time for other people's crimes in that regard, in terms of climate change and excessive overfishing.
What the future brings for not only Sonia, but the coral reefs, the environment that you see. Where are we going?
Well, I'm hopeful for development in that regard, you know, to keep putting it out there, to keep making it safer. I mean, while sometimes I do feel bogged down and I feel a bit awkward, like I'm like, oh my God. You know, there's the other part where I see a lot of growth. I really, really do. Like with my own safety protocols, with people that I'm attracting, and people that want to come to the table, and yeah, so I see a lot of growth in that regard and a lot of support. I get a lot of people contacting me very, very regularly, and the growth and the change on how I've received that, and then people. I've received, you know, anonymous donations and things like that, which is very heartening. That helps not only my research, but also me. Not that it's Sonia-centric, but one has to support oneself in order to be able to help others. Like I can't give away what I haven't got, you know, and that's what's been happening. So I see that development, and I also see how the Mesophotic research is also being really bumped up, because more and more people are, you know, really pumped for the ocean. We've got a whole, you know, new generations coming up going, yeah, I want to go diving, you know, much more switched on to the natural world, really, really clued in. I see a lot of hope in that. I want to be a part of all that. And yeah, so that is fantastic. And working in Unity, so that's what I see coming down the pike. And trying to kind of navigate through the paperwork and all that kind of stuff, you know, let that die of its own weight, you know, and let's just get on with it. That's a big part of my expeditions as well. It's like, look, here's a way we just get on with it, get it done, work together, have fun, don't worry about it.
Cool. And what do you think is the future of the coral reef based on your research?
Ooh. You know, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. COVID alone and marine protective areas as well show us that nature bounces back very fast. It is up to us to allow the natural world to do that. Now, this, I wouldn't say it was old news, but it's, you know, I'm not saying anything that's not unbelievably obvious to me anyway. So the future for coral reefs has great potential. It does. And unfortunately, we have an awful lot of power on what that looks like. So let's hope for the best. So the coral reefs can do it. Yay, coral reefs. Can we provide the right environment for them to continue to grow and thrive? I don't know.
What can we do actually to create that change?
So what you can, I mean, well, there's many ways. I mean, in terms of my own research, you can either come along, you know, see for yourself, see for yourself, see what's going on, be a part of, and then you'll want to contribute. People can financially contribute, as we noted before, and you can find that information and follow all my ventures on social media platforms. And the other thing is, again, it involves money. But where are you spending your money on a daily basis? Are you buying tin tuna? Wouldn't recommend it. You know, it's going against coral reefs. It's going against the natural environments. You know, what sort of things are you purchasing? That sort of thing. So thinking that through, doing your homework, you know, what green things are really green? You know what I mean? Think about the ocean, you know, so yeah. And I mean, you've got my bikes over there. Like, I don't come in on my car. I do have a car, but every day I use my bicycle if I don't have far to go, you know, a few miles. It's great. It's easy. You know, more trees, better environment, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, putting your money where your mouth is, being conscious.
What is future Sonia doing?
Developing a really solid team. Future Sonia is in the ocean, sharing the ocean, and discovering beautiful things and sharing it with everyone.
So how can we support you then?
Well, that's an excellent question. Well, first of all, a lot of my images are for sale, and you can have them in image or any format, yoga mats, you know, the whole thing. But in terms of people can donate, there's ways to donate on my website, or you can get in touch with me through my website and I can help you with that. And also you can come out on the expeditions. Now, first and foremost is you don't have to be a diver and you don't have to be a scientist. And those are important things. Now, you also can be a diver and you can be a scientist, and those are also very important things. So it's a very open process. Whether you are or not divers and scientists, it does give you the opportunity to have extended hours in the ocean, in the natural world, being part of where we came from, essentially, and being part of that discovery. I have found, I want to share with people how I have learned, and having all those long hours in the water or in the natural environment, and how that's helped me refine my skills and ask critical questions of why things are changing and why things are there and why that's cool, you know, those all sorts of different things. Now, to put that in a staged process, if you're just snorkeling or scuba diving, there's a lot of safety, there's a lot of shallow water transect work, there's when I get out the water, there's a lot of processing afterwards, sample processing, data processing, preparing for the next day, the rebreathers, the gases, the samples. All these different things are really important. The communication, the outreach, you know, the talking to the schools, you know, many, many different ways to be able to give back and be a part of. Now, if people are technical divers or want to learn more about technical diving, now before I actually did rebreather diving myself, I was very fortunate to be in a position on a boat with people diving rebreathers. So I dived as much as I could with people on rebreathers so I could learn. And so this also provides that platform for people who are keen to learn, not sure if it's for them, you know, that kind of thing. So learning about the diving itself. What I found is that people who are technical divers who want to be a part of, but are not necessarily scientists, I found them to be very good in the water for the most part. And they can bring a lot to the research and ask questions that often as a scientist, I can't always see, or I'm really bogged down with thinking of the process or the funding or, you know, something like that. So everybody has a lot to give. And those hours in the water provides the experience and the confidence of being in the natural world, being able to give back and be able to do more. So there are many, many ways in which to contribute and be a part of towards this research and towards my work.
And how can one join you on an expedition like that?
So I put out calls. It's all available also on my website. And people don't have to be divers to be part of the team. A lot of the work happens afterwards as well, which is breaking down the rebreather, processing the specimens, mixing the gases, getting everything prepared for tomorrow, you know, that is just as much work than the dive itself. So if people wanted to know, then the information is on my website and they can get in touch as contact information as well. But I put up for various locations, how much it would cost per day or per trip, for whether you're just normal scuba divers or whether you're like Tech 40 for a rebreather, Tech 60, Tech 100, and what those requirements are. So I go to locations that are remote, so they're not necessarily easy to get to, which is good, because then as a scientist, many of us are always looking for that place where no one has been. I think most people are looking for that, and it's getting harder and harder and harder. And also seeing nature as nature intended, not in a case of pure survival, in a place of thriving. And when I go out into the atolls in particular, then you start seeing that. Nature as nature intended, beautiful, and living not in a cash economy, you know, and that you can't put into words the sheer freedom and efficient you become. You become very confident, not arrogant, very, I suppose the word is empowered. You understand the environment as you've never done before, you know. And so I like to go to these places for a multiplicative of reasons, and that's one of them. People go away, they've changed. Someone said this to me years ago, and it holds true to this very day. Only you alone can do it, but you cannot do it alone.
I think we got this.
And thank you. There you go. Sometimes I can do really well, and other times I just can't. And also my social media platforms. There's other ways. Fuck. All right, just keep it simple, Sonia. You can. Oh my God, that was brilliant. And that is just gone. Why is this so hard?
Because you're asking for money and you hate it.
Yeah. It's hard. Oliver Twist, where's the ball? Gonna need some kind of subtitles or some bull.
What didn't make the cut?
Yeah, I know. The fuck bit.